Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, starring Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Kate Blanchett, John Rhys Davies, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, and Orlando Bloom, and directed by Peter Jackson. Now, why am I doing this series, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit? Well, I will explain you why. Because there's a movie coming out that's a biography about the writer named J.R.R. Tolkien. And his upcoming movie, which is about how he created these characters in the first place. Now, enough about that. Let's get into this movie. The prologue of Galadriel, played by Kate Blanchett, explaining the origin of the rings from the elves, dwarves, and men, and an evil ring from Mordor, led by Sauron, who made the one ring to rule them all, until Isildur defeats Sauron and has an opportunity to destroy the ring, but he decides to keep it until the ring betrays him, and goes to Gollum, played by Andy Serkis, after Planet of the Apes, and some other films. Well, before then, let me rephrase. Until it abandons him, and Bilbo Baggins of the Shire, played by Ian Holm, who is a hobbit that finds it when I get to the Hobbit. That mystery of Bilbo finding the ring and gets the ring is destroyed forever. I'll talk about it when I get to that first Hobbit film. But I like this prologue. It's typical fantasy opening, but it is well put together. Bilbo's nephew Frodo, played by Elijah Wood, is a great protagonist throughout not only this movie, but the entire trilogy of Lord of the Rings. I really like him throughout his arc, as we first see him waiting for Gandalf the Grey, played by Ian McKellen, which is funny because I'm reviewing him in the X-Men series as well as him as a wizard. And I found him to be a very delightful presence, and I'm really caring for these characters, and I want them to succeed in their characters, and their arcs and all that. Let me rephrase. Gandalf and Bilbo have a talk about how much Bilbo wants to see the mountains and picks on his pocket for the ring found 60 years ago. And we move on to Bilbo's birthday party, where we meet Samwise Gamgee, played by Sean Astin, having a crush on Rosie, and who won't get her until the end of the story. I won't get there this show, but it doesn't have the guts to ask her out. And I like that character too. We also meet Merry, played by Dominic Monaghan, and Pippin, played by Billy Boyd, playing with fireworks, which is pretty dangerous. And Bilbo makes a speech to the Shire and suddenly disappears to go to the mountains, and Gandalf tries to help Bilbo leave the ring behind to Frodo, and McKellen's acting is great in that scene, and I really enjoyed these characters and their relationships with each other. I like that Gandalf tells Frodo to keep this ring secret and safe, and so far Frodo succeeds. One night, the orcs, who are the bad guys, torture Gollum to tell them where the ring is, and gives up by saying, "Shire! Baggins!" Which will lead them to Frodo, and he and Gandalf realize the ring can't stay in the Shire and have to burn it in Mordor in the Mountain of Fire. And Gandalf sends Frodo and Sam on this adventure to destroy the ring and meet Gandalf at the village of Bree. And we're going to see greatness during this adventure. Meanwhile, Gandalf meets with Saruman, played by Christopher Lee, to realize he's with Sauron, and have a pretty violent fight, and Gandalf gets delayed by Saruman. Frodo and Sam meet with Merry and Pippin, and those two screw up everything in this adventure, including Pippin. And they run into orcs with hoodies until they escape on the river. To be honest, Pippin is problematic to this mission, in my opinion. They get to the village of Bree and wait for Gandalf, but they get drinks, and Frodo is disguised named Underhill, does fool the bartender, which did make me nervous until Pippin says Frodo Baggins is here. until Frodo accidentally puts on the ring and causes a scene and meets a Strider named Aragorn, played by Viggo Mortensen. And he's another character I like seeing in this movie. As for Viggo, after Green Book, which I reviewed earlier this year, I'm thinking he's a great actor. We move on to a scene I don't necessarily like when Merry, Pippin, and Sam light a fire to have supper, and the Orc Hoodies group and Stan comes by and stabs Frodo, and Aragorn fights off the hooded orcs, and Frodo needs the elvish medicine. And we meet Arwen, played by Liv Tyler, who wasn't very good in The Incredible Hulk and The Strangers, and she's just okay in this as an elf, but she's not given a lot to do, which is for the best. I do like her little scene where she saves Frodo's life. It was a good, fine moment of the film. Frodo wakes up to see Gandalf is there. How? The eagle comes in and gets him after he tells them Moth in the film and manages to escape with Frodo, arriving to Rivendell and meets Elrond, played by Hugo Weaving, sees his friends are there, and so is Bilbo, whom I'm really happy to see in Rivendell. Looks beautiful, honestly. I really like the look of this movie. The effects hold up after 2001. That's when the movie came out. We see Boromir, played by Sean Bean, Legolas, played by Orlando Bloom. It reminded me, why did you get famous after this movie? I feel like it's Pirates of the Caribbean that got you famous more than this one. And Gimli, played by John Rhys Davies, who I enjoy in movies I've seen him in, like Indiana Jones, and I've reviewed him before in Aquaman, and I'll see him again in Aladdin and The King of Thieves. And they talk about how the ring must be destroyed, and who will take it to Mordor? And Frodo volunteers to take it to Mordor, with Sam, Merry, Pippin, Aragorn, Gandalf, Legolas, and Gimli become the Fellowship of the Ring, and that was a powerful moment of this movie. I have a funny experience my second viewing of the 4 times I saw this in theaters. When Bilbo becomes a monster and attacks Frodo, this lady who sat behind me, and I saw this with my father at the time, went like, "Oh, Jesus!" Was the funniest experience I've had in a movie, but it was very good acting by Ian Holm. I will admit that part. The Fellowship begins their journey to put the ring in fire, and I'm liking this team in the Fellowship of the Ring. And they almost get spotted by Saruman's spies, so Gandalf has an idea of going off to the Snowy Mountain, where Boromir almost gets the ring away, but Aragorn tells Boromir to give the ring to Frodo, and I can tell Frodo doesn't like Boromir, and that's just great acting by the actors. Saruman attacks the Fellowship from a distance, and they manage to get out of it, and Gandalf tries to speak friend in a different language. Elvish, that's what it was. And Frodo knows it's the Elvish word, and suddenly, because Merry and Pippin throw rocks in the water, some octopus-looking creature attacks and almost eats Frodo alive. And I'm enjoying the Middle-earth world and the creatures, and are fantastic to look at. They get into a place where Gimli's dwarf friends are killed, and Pippin drops the body, and that's dead, and that's when I wanted to kill Pippin at this point, because he screws everything up, and they fight a hell of a lot of orcs, and Gandalf leads them to the stairs of escape. And Gandalf fights off against a fire-breathing demon, and that famous line from the movie, "You shall not pass," and defeats it until the whip gets on its foot and slips into Gandalf's death, which was rather pretty damn depressing, but a powerful moment for them to keep going after Gandalf's death. When they get to meet Galadriel, when I first saw this movie, I thought, she's absolutely freaky with her eyes. Looking at Frodo and tells him he's seen the eye in Sauron, and the scene where he envisions the Shire future with the ring at Helm, and she tests Frodo about his vision, and that scene is another one that freaked me out. when I was a younger man. I'm really liking the score throughout this movie, including these scenes. They they stop a lot. They stop at a lake to get some rest. Boromir tries to take the ring from Frodo, and he hides from him. Aragorn fights with Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Merry, Pippin, Sam, and Frodo. And Frodo decides to get out of that fight and realizes his fate is going to Mordor alone. And Merry and Pippin get captured by the orcs, and Boromir dies again and again and again. That took too long for me. And Aragorn fights the main orcs sent by Saruman, which it's funny how Boromir kept fighting, and an awesome fight until Aragorn rips the main orc's head off with his sword, which is kind of shocking for a PG-13 rating. Sam goes with Frodo to Mordor, and Merry and Pippin, like I said, get captured by the orcs. And Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli put a dead Boromir on a boat, and they go hunting for the orcs that captured Merry and Pippin, and Frodo and Sam are on the way to Mordor when the credits begin to roll, and I'm okay with this ending. I like the song by Enya called May It Be. I think it was a beautiful song to end a beautiful movie with. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.9 out of 10. I really like the characters and their relationship, but plus their arcs. This movie is beautiful looking, and the score is absolutely beautiful. There are times it gets scary and sad, but I really like this movie for the heart it has for this trilogy. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. And until next time, let's burn the ring in Mordor.